We excuse her.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Redox 5, formerly known as the CF5. My name is Dr. Lee Osler. I hail from Washington State, and that's in the U.S. For all of our international guests, I'm joined with our co-hosts Jim and Ann Glenn in San
Hey, y'all.
Antonio, Texas. Glad to have them in the house with us. We excuse Dr. Maureen Hayes, who has stepped aside to have some medical attention to her hip, and so we wish her speedy recovery. That
She's
just
doing
occurred.
very well.
We legitimately excuse her. We have tonight as our guest Dr. Dick Walker, who is from Spokane, Washington. Dr. Dick is a retired physician. He spent many, many years as an emergency room physician. He's double degreed. He's got master's degrees in nutrition, and so we're going to maybe tap into that tonight as well.
Love it.
We are going to leave the chat open for those who are with us. We ask that you respect it. And if you have an important question, we'd be happy to entertain that as appropriate. So with that, we'll start with the a disclaimer. We each represent as independent associates a company called ASEA Global. This is a supplement company that is marketing a cellular health product that we call a redox signaling molecule. As such, we do not make any claims to cure, diagnose, treat medical disorders. We will not be naming medical disorders tonight. We will speak in a generic, compliant terms, especially as it relates to cellular health. So with that said, Dick, we'd like to welcome you again. I know you've been on before. You have a position with the company as being the chairman of the Medical Professionals Board, and maybe as we get into this, you can describe what that board is and what your function on that is, and how that works to serve us all. So come on in and let us become better acquainted with you. For those who are new, they probably want to know a little bit about your background and maybe what attracted you to this project that we call ASEA.
Yeah, absolutely. I first was introduced to this, I don't know, about 11, 12 years ago. And my story is a little bit different than a lot of you because I was actually looking for a company that was in direct sales network marketing because I'd been with another company and did fairly well with them, not nearly as well financially as I have with ASEA, but the management in that company changed and they changed the compensation plan. And so I went from having a pretty good life, not working really hard in the ER, back to 40, 50 hours a week because I had to generate the income. We had 4 kids that we were putting through college, just finishing. The stock market had whacked my 401k down to much less than that. And I was 64 going on 65, and I knew I needed to be able to generate some money in a hurry. But in addition to my physician income, because, when you make a certain amount of income, you live up to that. And then when you make extra, you live up to that. And so we had a little bit of a deficit going on. And as you can see behind me, that's not a fake background. I live in a really big log house with a pretty good mortgage. And, part of my dream in ASEA was to be able to continue to pay that mortgage so I didn't lose my home. But I had some pretty strict criteria of what I was looking for. On the top of that had to be an ethical company. That other company was a foreign-based company. I wanted a U.S.-based company because some of the experiences we'd had with that. And I wanted a product that was unique. I did not want to, I knew what the nutritional market space looked like in these companies, and I didn't want to have to be arguing that my vitamins were better than your vitamins. I just didn't want to do that. I mean, I could, but I didn't want to do that. So I was looking for a company with a unique, hopefully a new product, something that was new to the marketplace that worked really well. and I wanted to be able to meet with the company and make sure that they were above board and ethical and had the wherewithal to grow. I thought a young company would be a good idea. A lot of people want to go with an established company. I knew the growth could be quicker with a newer company. And so those are the things I was looking for. And at the same time, I was 64 going on 65. It had been about 5 years since my last big expedition. Some of you know that I've climbed mountains all over the world, mountains with big names like Everest and McKinley and Aconcagua. But I'd spent several months down on the ice in Antarctica. But my body was starting to tell me that I probably wasn't going to be able to do those things any longer because I was getting older, and I didn't like that. And I started to see references in the literature to redox, and that had, even early on, there wasn't a huge amount of science. If I went to the National Institute of Health database, there were less than 1,000 references, but some of them were quite interesting. This was before I heard about ASEA. This was when I was looking for something that could maintain my endurance and youth, and at least youthful physiology. I had no idea that there was a company that was marketing a Redox product. And then Jerry White, who I had also been in that other company with, he and I were both, and Terry Latham, all three of us were looking for a different company. I think my criteria were probably some of the strictest because I had income and they didn't. I had my job, although that didn't give me the freedom and lifestyle that I wanted. And so we sort of discovered ASEA together. They got in a couple of days before I did, so they're above me in the tree, which is no big deal. And so we all went down to Salt Lake together and liked what we saw, came home with some product, started working with Denny and Trish, Denny Robinson and Trish Winkler, and just started to recommend it to people. Like I said, I was working full time. I was working a lot of hours at the ER, and I enjoyed the ER, but I didn't like that lifestyle. I didn't like missing birthdays and holidays with the kids. I worked a lot of nights, and that was kind of hard on the physiology. And so this seemed like a very good idea. And so I just started sharing the products with people. And while I kind of looked at the compensation plan, learned the comp plan, and literally within a couple of years, I was able to really cut back at the hospital, and within another year or two had the option of staying or not, continuing in medicine. And I worked both for a while to kind of reestablish my retirement plan, and then went full time after about 5 years, I think. So it's been wonderful. And now, as the science has evolved, I'm kind of a science geek, yeah, as you might imagine, with my degree in nutrition and that sort of thing. So I've kept abreast of redox science, not quite at the level that Lee has to write books about it, but I found his books were fascinating and really helped me hone in on how this all worked. And the trying to keep up with the literature on PubMed is impossible. There's so much coming in there. Lee and I trade articles back and forth every once in a while. I think I owe Lee one because he sent me one last week, because we're trying to figure out some way to measure oxidative stress in the mouth, which is very important to dentists. And so that's been a lot of fun. The Medical Professional Board, when I was first asked to be on that a number of years ago, they really didn't do much of anything. It was more of a reward for success in the business and for professionals. So I remember going to Scott one day and I said, and I stuck my foot in my mouth like I've done throughout my life in volunteer positions, and said, "Hey, I think we should be doing more." And he said, "Great, you got the job." So he says, "Pick some people that really want to run with this." And so we put together a board with Lee and a number of other people on it who were medical practitioners who were focused on the business, focused on the technology, knew how to talk about it to people. And primarily, we help ASEA with messaging. They let us know what they're doing in research. We figure out how to talk about that, how to educate people about that, and how to apply it to the business of doing ASEA. And that's been very fascinating because we get first looks at some of their most of their research. Unfortunately, a lot of it we can't talk about it in the beginning until they've released it. But I'll tell you, this company is really going somewhere, and they're really getting into what the topic that I was most fascinated with in the beginning, and that's anti-aging. That's what got me the most excited about ASEA. Yes, I like to see people who have physical challenges be able to overcome those or significantly, drastically improve them. Um, but from a societal standpoint, from making a difference and a business standpoint, anti-aging is huge. It's a huge market. It's a huge problem for many people because of the problems that arise as they age. And so I'm just fascinated with where ASEA is going with anti-aging. And folks, we've got the best age-defying product in the marketplace for scientific reasons, anyway. Yep.
So,
Okay, Dick. A lot of people are new. They don't really know what we're yet talking about. Could you please describe in your words, and then maybe Lee, if you want to tap into that, what are we talking about? What is in this blue bottle? Because it says honestly it's made from sodium chloride and water, which I think is saline, and it says it's a dietary supplement. So can you kind of dig into that, both of you, please?
Yeah, I'll start and then Lee can chime in because
Okay.
he's written 2 or 3 books about it. But what I tell people is that the ingredients in that bottle is not salt water. Salt water is what it's made from. But after it goes through a proprietary patented electrolytic process, bunch of big words, fancy words, it turns that salt water into a special mixture of what are called redox signaling molecules. And that's not a word that ASEA came up with. That's actually a scientific category of molecules. And not to get too sciencey, but what they are is they're the language of our cells to a large degree. And they allow our cells to communicate both within and between cells a huge amount of information that's necessary for the body to function at the cellular level, which is where it all starts, and also to stay healthy, to stay on top of the game. Your body at the cellular level has the ability to fix and repair most problems that arise, but there has to be communication within the cell and between cells so that they know that there's a problem, so that they can activate all the way down to the genetic level and open up genetic programs that control repair pathways, that control metabolic pathways that the cell needs to function. And so it's very, very important. And if redox is the language of our cells, then redox signaling molecules are the letters or the words that make up that language. And without it, we wouldn't survive, and we certainly wouldn't thrive if we don't have a sufficient balanced supply of redox signaling molecules. So what those molecules do, they're just a tool that the cell needs to function and uses where necessary to repair, rebuild, rejuvenate, whatever words you want to use. And so, it's the body that does the healing. It's not the molecules. The molecules are a tool that the body uses.
yeah, that's really great. I'll just kind of give a high altitude, look at this. We're really talking about this inner healer, the body healing from the inside out. But the question is, how does the body know it's in trouble, or the cell? How does the cell detect or sense that it's having, an issue or a problem, and how does it respond to it? We call that the redox regulatory circuit. This is a mechanism that's in each cell, and I think a good analogy or even a metaphor is to think of the thermostat on the wall of your home. In your house or even your office building, there's a thermostat on the wall that has the ability, because of its programming and its machinery, to detect when the conditions of the room either exceed or fall below a certain set point. And we'll call that set point, that balance point, we'll call that in the cell, we'll call that homeostasis. That's where there's a relative balance between what we call oxidants and reductants. When we use the word redox, we're talking about reduction and oxidation. And so when we have oxidants, or molecules that are missing an electron, that produces a state called oxidation. And for decades, we've taken, supplements that we call antioxidants, which really are nothing more than a vitamin or a phytochemical, which has extra electrons to donate or to reduce the oxidation back to that set point. So back to my room analogy, if the thermostat, if the room gets too cold or too hot, the relay in the thermostat detects that, and it initiates actions inside a machine, usually in the attic or the basement, or in the adjoining room or garage or something, to turn on, and it conditions or heats the air back to that set point, at which time that little mechanism turns off. So that means it's responsive to what's going on. This is a little different than the antioxidant nutrition thing I just spoke about, because you can keep taking antioxidants, you can megadose, you can top load, and you just can keep continuing to reduce or provide, these reductants to the body at will. But the body's mechanism is such that when it is sufficiently back in balance, it turns off. And so we're talking about a stress response to answer the imbalance that's going on in the cell, such that it activates a healing response, a balancing response internally, intrinsically. That's the way the body's designed. And so this company that we are a part of, that has these redox signaling molecules created through electrolysis, creates these bioidentical signaling molecules that are suspended in saline, that have the ability to turn on and turn off these switches that we were just talking about. So we can, as we age, we have less of them. We're producing less of them natively. And as we replenish or supplement them from external sources from ASEA, we can reinstate or get back to that capability of being able to sense, detect, respond, and correct the issues that are going on in the cell. These are the deepest cell signaling molecules that have ever been discovered. And they're at the most upstream foundational, level or place in all of these pathway genes. So that's how I answer that question. It's an important concept because these are responsive.
Okay. So at the end of the day, and we've already covered a ton, and Dr. Walker, to me, it's all about what is it done. We can have all the science, we can have all of that, and there's some people. Actually, I've spoken to doctors in the past. They don't care about that. They want to talk to people that have had changes in their lives. Dr. Walker, what has this technology done for you? And we are going to have your wife on separately in a couple of weeks, so we're going to share her story then. So at the end of the day, what has it done for you?
So I would say that the first thing that I noticed was that I regained a significant amount of the endurance that I felt that I was losing. I've always worked out a lot, and I had gotten to the point where I wasn't able to put in the miles, running or biking that I had been able to, or I thought I needed to stay in tip-top shape. And said, in case somebody called me up and said, "Hey, we're going off on an expedition. You want to come?" Because if you're going to do something big like that, you got to be in shape. And so I just tried to stay in pretty good shape all the time in case I got that phone call, because I knew it was harder and harder to get back into that if I let it slip. So I noticed that my conditioning was really better, and I was able to, if I was going to run or bike, I could do both in the same day. I could run in the morning, bike in the afternoon, 25, 30 miles or whatever on the bike or more, and, 5 to 10 running. And so I got that level of endurance back pretty quickly. And then the only real health challenge I had was that when I put that cuff on my arm and pumped that thing up, the numbers were too high. And so I was on 3 and sometimes 4 different medications to get that value where it needed to be for years, because I knew how detrimental that was to your cardiovascular system. But within several years after being on ASEA, and I've taken 8 ounces a day or more from the very beginning, because I was already mid 60s. And as Lee alluded to, the older you get, the fewer of these molecules that your cells make naturally. So you need more, you need to supplement with more. And I was a pretty high functioning guy, so I needed more just to help my body do what I was doing. But after a couple of years, that problem went away. And I knew that, I'm a doctor, but do I check that value really closely? No. But what I noticed was I was getting lightheaded when I would get up quickly. And I thought, wow, maybe that number is, maybe I don't need all that medicine. And lo and behold, I didn't. And so over a couple weeks time period after talking to my doc, we just phased all those out. And, I had perfect blood pressure. I had a couple of insurance exams lately, and they're fine without any of those drugs that I was taking. So those are the biggest changes. And there's been a lot of little things. I've had 2 knee replacements. I was on the ski hill skiing 2 months after my first one, which my doctor thought I was absolutely crazy, but what the heck, most of the swelling was down, wasn't hurting. And the ski season was about to end. So by gosh, I was going to go skiing. So, I'm that kind of person. I'll push myself, but ASEA was allowing me to push when I wanted to. I'm 75 now, I'll be 76 next month. So I've kind of toned that down a fair amount. And I had my other knee replaced about a year ago. So I'm the bionic man. I've had a shoulder and 2 knee replacements. And ASEA has helped me recover from all of those really significantly quicker, I think, than average or what was expected. Yeah.
If you don't mind, because you have been on ASEA for how long? On Redox, the molecules for how long, Dick?
11 going on 12 years.
Okay, so I want you to kind of cover, well, if it's fixing everything, which we know it's not, but could you cover, well, why didn't your knees get better? Right? I mean, it's supposed to, I think there's a perception that we need to address with what do we call it? Expectations.
Right.
That still going to have things happen that still may need to get fixed. Could you please address that real quick? Then Ann's got a question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for a fact if that would have happened if I'd started taking Redox when I was in my 20s. I don't know if that would have kept my knees out of problem. But wear and tear happens, and things happen, injuries happen, disease happens. Some of you've got genetics that sometimes are going to get you into trouble. But life happens, and just because you're on ASEA, it's not going to keep all of that stuff from happening, or you getting into trouble with it. But I can tell you that you're going to be better off in most cases with those problems if you're on ASEA than if you aren't. And I know that because we've seen people who have gotten on ASEA after they've had those problems for a significant period of time, and things have improved. So ASEA does have a remarkable ability, because it's active and regulating and involved with every kind of tissue, organ, cells. It does have the ability, by giving your body this tool that unlocks these repair pathways, to tolerate a lot of these things much better. But it doesn't necessarily keep you from getting those conditions. And again, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have had my knees replaced yet if I'd have been on this stuff 20 years earlier. I just don't know. But you've got a pretty good supply up until 50. But we've got the Torre study that showed that people in their mid-30s benefited significantly in terms of opening up and facilitating certain genetic pathways in their mid-30s. And so we already know that there's a decline in certain genetic areas and certain signaling pathway areas in your mid-30s. It doesn't wait until you're 50 or 60 for you to have those problems develop. And so, and you wouldn't know those problems were there unless you did certain tests that aren't ordinarily done, in the doctor's office. So this is insurance for a lot of people. It's insurance to help you stay as healthy as your body can keep you, because you're establishing or maintaining redox balance or redox homeostasis or hormesis, and we didn't get into that word, but the stuff that Lee was talking about, I'm fascinated with that because what ASEA does, when you work out, let's say you weight train, and maybe you have a pretty heavy day where you're pushing the weights, and how do you feel the next day? Sore, stiff, and we don't say, I'm never going to lift weights again because I got sore and stiff. I thought this was going to help me. Well, that's part of the process because you stress the system, you get sore and stiff, then your body repairs, and then you're stronger and more resilient after that. And the ASEA is a little bit like that. You take ASEA, it stresses your system a little bit. Your body then waffles around that set point, that thermostatic set point that Lee was talking about, reestablishes that, but at a better level, so that you're now more resilient. The term that we use for that is that you're more stress resilient. You can't eliminate stress in your life, and we're not just talking emotional stress. We're talking about musculoskeletal stress, starvation stress, overeating stress. I mean, think of the people in Gaza and Ukraine that can't get enough food. Well, that's a stress. And then think about Americans where we eat too much. Well, that's a stress. And your body has to respond to those stresses in order to stay healthy. And redox molecules are very important in helping the body to deal with that. And in terms of signaling, I like Alan uses the analogy that, if your house is on fire but the fire company never learns about it, your house is going to burn to the ground. And so that's a signaling issue, right? Well, the same, I like to use the analogy, if you're making dinner and you slice your finger open with a knife, how does your body know, other than ouch, that hurts, that you've got something that needs to be paid attention to? And that's all redox signaling. As the cells in that area say, hey, we got a problem down here, and the immune system says, we're on our way to fix that. But how does it know, and how does all that fit together so that 2 weeks from now you got a little scar there, but if you use Renew on it, if you use our topical molecules, you won't even have that scar after a while. So it's all about responding to injury, to various stressors, and supplementing with these molecules just helps your body to be more resilient and to be able to bounce back and respond to that.
Oops, there we go.
There you go.
I am muted.
Yeah, those are great points. I was thinking about several things you had shared. I remember when you had that one surgery and you described, a month later you were skiing. I do recall that. Or 1 or 2 months. So I saw you share about that in a short video. But how much were you taking between the time you had that surgery and the time you got to the slopes? Did you increase your quantity of molecules?
I did. I was probably somewhere between closer to 16 ounces than 8 ounces, which is what my baseline dose is. And I've gradually increased it over the years as I've gotten older. But certainly if I have an additional stressor like surgery or injury or illness, then I take more. Yeah. Or if I'm anticipating it, I take more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we do. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing that you were bouncing back so quick. And we know, just based on the gene study and the inflammation pathway, and, works on the spinal, if somebody's going through something physically, just based on how we've seen results and how you can use the Renew 28 and see results so quickly, even just doing the, 3 and 5. So we know that taking any extra is going to allow, even if somebody had to have surgery, to bounce back much better than if they weren't on them at all. So that's what we encourage people. Like you just said, we up it when we're doing more. And again, going back to the gene study, since Lee had brought that up earlier, it's pretty exciting when we got that done in 2017. I feel like it anchors our product. And those are just the pathways they studied. I mean, we don't even know what else these molecules and where they're going. And sometimes when somebody has an injury, or in the case of a surgery, the molecules could be going after something much more important in the heart, the kidney, the liver, the brain, and not putting any attention on somebody's knee, hip, or shoulder. And so there are times, unfortunately, some people have to have that if it's just not allowing them to have the best quality of life. And again, as you age, you're going to need it. The last point I was going to make was at the very beginning, I was really intrigued on the business side when you were looking at this, because you were looking for, possibly a new product, not the Me Too types, and we didn't have nutrition then. And so you went with a company that is obvious. At the time we were new, and a lot of companies fold in this industry within 5 years. And here we are doing well at 15 years later. We started with the staple product, then to the Renew, and now nutrition, skincare, and the self performance. So for somebody out there looking for a company, or, they want to know more about ASEA, I mean, we have everything to prove that we're here to stay. And don't you see that with everything you've seen? You've been in longer than us, almost 9 years with us. Don't
Yeah,
you feel like they added the other stuff that just anchors our company even more?
yeah, and I think most of the people that got into this early were like I was a risk taker. I mean, in my whole life, and I knew I was taking a risk with ASEA because the company was only 3 or 4 years old. But I felt that they knew what they were doing. They had very good management. They had a very good vision and understanding of what they had and where they were headed in the marketplace. And I was just confident that, if we got good people in on the marketing end of this, that this company was going to do just fine and prosper. And that's proven to be true. Some people say, well, why isn't it growing quicker? Well, the company could have grown quicker if they'd done a few things different, but they didn't really want to. They wanted to establish a long-term legacy building company, and not take risks, and just continue to build and add to their patents, add to their, this product is better now than it was when they started. This is a better redox signaling product than it was a number of years ago. And in fact, during the COVID thing, when they weren't getting out in the field as much, they were busy kind of polishing the science and improving the process, so that there's actually more molecules in that bottle, about 25% more than there used to be, because they've improved the process. So if you knew what Lee and I know about the science, because we're on that board, you'd be even more impressed with what's going on. This is a high-tech biotechnology company. It just happens to be in the consumer products end of that. They don't make drugs. They make consumer products that are highly scientific, and very well documented. And we don't have anything to prove now. These products, this technology, this science is proven without a doubt. And when I talk to somebody that says, well, it's not working on me, and I just say, well, that's very strange, because it works on everybody. We know it works. We know how it works. And you're either not taking enough, or you're not taking it regularly enough, or your body just hasn't had enough time to address those issues, because it can't not work. It's scientifically designed to work, and your body isn't any different than my body at the cellular level. And so this product is going to work. The two variables are dose and frequency, regularity, and then time. And once you get all three of those working together in the right direction, you will have a response with this product. It may not meet your expectation if you're expecting to have the body of a 20-year-old and you're starting at age 70, but you are going to have a healthier 70-year-old body if you take ASEA than if you don't.
Very good points. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lee.
I was gonna segue into this expectation things, and you went right there. I'm so glad. This is probably one of the the more disconcerting things that I face is trying to help people understand, this, well, it doesn't work thing, and sometimes, if you must speak, ask questions. And so it's like, well, what are you expecting it to do? If you're expecting it to be a drug, like aspirin takes care of a headache within 30 minutes, and it's working, right? But that's I don't know if you want to go any deeper into that or not, but that this is working at a cellular level, and you're not going to feel it. This isn't something that you walk away and feel, maybe with the exception of the topical thing. So maybe you could go into
Right.
that, those two different things there, because if people's expectations are, well, I didn't feel it, it didn't work for me. That's the most common response I get from people. It's like, what is your response to that?
Well, I think you're right on track there, because first you have to decide what does works mean to them, and is that a reasonable expectation that they have? And so I think sometimes people listen to the really cool, miraculous, really dramatic testimony, and they figure that that's going to be the same for everybody. And it's not, and it's not that ASEA is different, it's that your body is different. And so everybody's body to some degree is different than another. The condition that you bring to this, the amount of injury or damage that you have, your ability to respond is different. The genetics are different. So there's a lot of variables other than ASEA, but the two variables that are most important with ASEA are dosage and frequency. You have got to take this product regularly. You can't take it on Monday and Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, whenever you feel like it. You've got to take it every day, preferably twice or more often. And if you're really struggling with problems, then I would recommend 4 times a day. You don't have to take it. I run into some people that say, well, I'm taking a sip or two every hour or two. And Lee can comment about this, but I think that this product works best when it's taken every 6 hours or so. You've got to give your body a chance to respond to the dose. And if you're just constantly putting in more redox molecules, you're not getting that balancing thing. You're not getting out of balance and then coming back into balance. You're not using the hormetic or homeostatic mechanisms to your benefit. So I recommend that people take it. I don't think that there's any real good reason to take it any more often than 4 times a day. So if you're taking 16 ounces, take 4 ounces 4 times a day and just split it up. If you're taking bigger amounts, you might take it 6 times a day, but fit it into your lifestyle. Nobody should be setting an alarm to get up at night to take ASEA. There's no reason to do that. But you have to take it regularly, and you have to take it every day. And if you do for a long enough period of time, and that's a variable that we don't really know what that's going to be for you. We know that about 30% of people will have some significant change in their health within 30 days, about 60% in 60 days, and about 90 in 90 days. But those are rough figures, and you don't know ahead of time where you're going to fall into that. But there's still 10% that may take 6 months or a year for something really significant to happen. And that's not ASEA's issue. That's your body just being either more damaged or slower to respond. And there's a bunch of different variables that control that.
So, Lee, I want you to address, as it says, it's a dietary supplement, again, made from salt water. Why are we speaking, as we typically call it, code talk? We can't name diseases. There's a reason for that. And then also why it was going to be a drug, but now it's not. Can you kind of go into that, maybe both of y'all?
Yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed early on, as well as continue to, is the history, of how this came to be. This was not a company in search of a product. They didn't have an existing compensation plan that said, let's go find a product and go get rich with this. This was a biotech company originally, and the researchers were looking to create this product of redox signaling to treat some very significant diseases at that time. This goes back 15, even 20 years in the early goings of this research. And basically, their intent, as most biotech companies are, was to develop something and then basically sell or flip it, to big pharma, and then move on to the next research project. That's what they are, as researchers and developers. They weren't in it for any other reason. And so they hit some roadblocks. And anybody who wants more of the details, can watch the video called the Genesis story. You can find that on YouTube or on discoverredox.com. But the point is that they were actually headed in that direction, but they could not become a drug. They couldn't meet some of the thresholds relative to drug development, one being a lethal dose 50 certificate, where any drug, agent, compound, whatever, to be a drug must go through a process where you increase the dose until 50% of the laboratory specimen, the animals, perish. And then you have the LD50 or lethal dose 50. And then you get this certificate and you can continue with your drug development. Well, that didn't happen because none of the laboratory specimens got sick or died. They just got healthy. So they said, well, you're dead in the water. The financial backers said, well, if they're not going that direction, we're out of here. And so that's where Virtus Norton stepped in and said, I really think we're onto something. It's just not going to be a drug. And so he flipped it to the other side of the FDA, where the supplements are regulated. And that's why this is now a supplement, which is why we can't talk about this in terms of medical disease, or diagnosing or treating. And we don't name them. That's the code talk. And so it's a cellular health product. I'm really glad it wasn't a prescription. I'm glad it's not controlled. I'm glad you don't have to have a physician's prescription. I'm glad this isn't administered by IV. There's just so many things that we're glad for, that we now have access to this. Could it have become a drug, or could it have gone in a different direction? Yes, and many people clamor, for us to do the research for specific diseases, and we're just not going to do that because then we would be making drug claims. And so that's why we don't make those statements that way.
Go
And
ahead.
And if it was, the only one on this show that could authorize it would be me, because I have prescriptive authority for pharmaceuticals. But Lee,
And it
you
would be
probably have
extremely expensive.
Yeah, you have some. But yeah, and I think that I don't want to make too much out of that LD50, although I think it's important, but I don't think that in and of itself would have prevented this necessarily from becoming a drug, because that pharmaceutical company did come out and evaluate the research, did offer Virtus a lot of money for this. So they must have figured they could get around that somehow. But I think even more importantly is it just doesn't fit the mode of a drug, because drugs are designed to treat one thing. They're designed to treat one disease or one condition. And if you go to the regulators and you say, well, geez, I got something here that seems to treat a whole bunch of different things. Well, that's not possible. That sounds like a miracle. That sounds like a supplement. It doesn't sound like a drug, because drugs are narrowly focused on a certain target disease or target symptom. And this is nothing like that. Plus, I don't think Virtus wanted to give up the control over this product. I think he was afraid he knew he had something pretty darn special here, and he was a marketer at heart. And I think he really wanted to build a legacy, and look what's happened. He has, and his son has taken over and is continuing to build on that, because this is something that we've never seen before. This is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal breakthrough in a phenomenal new area of science called redox biology. And I don't know, I never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime that could do what this does, because it's just so different than any drugs or really any other supplement that I've studied or recommended or worked with. And not to mention the efficacy, but the safety profile. Whenever I write a prescription, whenever you go pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, you get this big folded up little, I mean, in print that you got to get the magnifying glass out to read about all the terrible things it can do to you. And we don't have any of that. We don't have any of that. We just say, take this, it's entirely safe. And the only thing it can do is help you. We know it's not going to hurt you. And it may take a while before you notice what it's doing for you. But from the first sip, it can't help but help your physiology in the ways that we've been talking about.
And I love how, drugs can't write on their packages non-toxic. They're not going to do that. And so there is something that could happen to a certain organ or a side effect. And they don't claim anything of cellular repair. And here we are able to state that it regenerates the cells. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Well, it
And
doesn't, it gives your body a tool so that it can regenerate. Yeah.
right. And you can't give that same product if it's a drug. You're certainly not going to give it to your child, a baby, or your dog. And here it's so amazing that the whole family can share that one bottle. It obviously we're going to run out, but
Plus, that's
product can go for anybody in the house. So that's pretty amazing.
Yep.
What were you going to say?
Even your pets.
That's right. We give it to our 13-year-old dog, so we know it works. You were gonna comment?
Nick, I'd like to ask you if you'd maybe just touch on what we call the redox active side, which is the nutrition side. Those aren't redox signaling molecules, but could you've got the background to brag about, with regards to nutrition. Speak to that if you would, just a little.
Yeah, there are a number of different chemical pathways in your cells that do some important things, like keep you awake and just a bunch of things. And in those biochemical pathways, they're targeted at a specific functionality. And some of those chemical reactions that make that happen are redox reactions. In other words, they're dependent on the sharing of an electron, either giving up or receiving an electron. And they are not, it doesn't involve signaling molecules, but it involves the process of reduction, oxidation, and reduction oxidation. And so those reactions, that's a targeted, specific chemical reaction within your cell that relies on electron transfer to make that happen. Whereas these signaling molecules are really controlling at a much more robust, larger level of controlling stress and activating repair pathways and that sort of thing. So you've got, and what I've noticed is that if you're taking redox signaling molecules, the blue bottle product, as a baseline, these other products I think work better because you've got the redox environment. You've got the playing field healthy from a redox standpoint, and then now you can use these targeted products to bring about certain results, like mental clarity, an improved mood or improved energy. And so that's fascinating, but I really feel that our foundational product, our foundational technology is our redox signaling molecules. But these other products are great, and VIA is great because you do need cellular nutrition. If you've got the worker bees, the redox signaling molecules that are identifying that there's a problem, that this cell needs to be fixed, but you still need ingredients to fix that. That's where nutrition comes in, and in nutrition, one of the biggest issues is bioavailability. You've got to get. It doesn't matter what's in the pill or what's in the liquid or what's in the whatever form that you're taking your nutrition in. It is important what's in there, but what's really important is what gets into the cell. Because if it's just floating around outside of the cell in your bloodstream or whatever, it's not getting into the cell, it's not really working. And so ASEA does a really good job at manufacturing from whole food sources a nutritional line that's very, very bioavailable. And I think that's one of the most important features of the VIA line is the bioavailability of that. Yeah.
For sure.
Lee, I mean, Dr. Walker, is there a way for other people to tell if they're taking something else, the bioavailability? I mean, that seems, I don't know if those products have to identify that or not. I know ours is, but I mean, you that's your world. I mean,
To a certain
is there,
degree, it's by you have to know where you're getting it from. It's not controlled very much. It's not a controlled industry, and so you really have to rely to a certain degree on where you're getting the product from,
okay.
and where they got their ingredients from. Right now, China is the biggest manufacturer of bulk ingredients for nutritional products. And yet I'm not so sure that that's the highest quality provider of ingredients for nutritional products. And ASEA gets all of their stuff in the U.S., is my understanding, from really reliable sources. And that's why, our green bottle, it's called Source, and that's because the source of the ingredients is important. There you go. And that's why they call that Source, because they're meticulous in the source that they get the ingredients from to make that product, which is highly bioavailable.
And when they were putting these all together, I mean, the whole point of getting even the nutrition, because again, there's no nutritional value in the redox signaling. So you have to have better food. And if you look at the typical Western diet, which is junk, you need to have an alternative, which we know we know how they source them. So I trust them. So when they tested him, they want it to get to a redox potential, right? I mean, get our body where, like you said, you've got the labor and the materials because you're doing redox as well. But so that's what I like so much about it. And I remember when they were studying even cell performance, and we were at the conference and they were just introducing it, the scientists were looking for categories on how they put these. I think it was Henry was describing how they put together cell performance, and it had to have a criteria that it met, like 4 important points before they would bring it out. So I love that about our company, is that they so much research before they bring out something else, and they don't bring out too much. We only have 15 products, but all of them center around that cellular health, which that's why we love it so much.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing ASEA was smart to do in that cell performance line is that instead of reinventing the wheel, Henry went out and found ingredients that had already been proven. The science was done, the articles were there, and then they used that and other ingredients mixed in together to make those 3 cell performance products. And they're always doing research on improving those products. The medical professional board was just in a trial on the energy one. So I think we'll see some changes over time in those products to make them better and more effective at what they're supposed to be doing. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and those key ingredients, they're putting enough of it in each of those products to make it work based on what those previous studies were done by other sources, correct? I mean, that's a huge deal.
Absolutely. In the nutritional industry, you'll find that there are a lot of companies that they make a really good label, so
Right.
they design the label, and then it's not that they don't have those ingredients in there, but they have the cheapest source of those particular ingredients and just enough so that they can legally put it on the label, but not necessarily an amount that is effective and efficacious to improve your health. And so that's called dressing up your label. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to go ahead, Lee, because I do have a point I'm going to wrap up with, but I want you guys to comment on.
I was going to say that's one thing I'm really appreciative of is the degree of we'll call it expertness relative to their formulation. They put a lot of focus on formulation and not cutting corners and trying to make for example, the cellular performance line, palatable taste, so it's accepted. but deeper than that, they're legitimate in terms of the formulation.
Yes.
But you know,
Okay.
getting it quality to a certain degree, you're going to get what you pay for. And ASEA is not going to cut corners just so that they can bring you a product at a certain price point. They're going to they have to pay attention to price point because otherwise they would lose money. But they're going to bring you an efficacious product at an affordable price that will deliver for you what it's supposed to. So, yeah.
And that's so contrary to the marketplace. Everybody else is trying to cut corners and get it as cheap as possible. I want to kind of go back, and I pray this makes sense, but we have a category creating technology that's never been out there before. So here we are 15 years ago coming to the marketplace, and Vertus Norton was not a networker. He was running, Kraft Foods. He was in charge of global strategy. And I wish people would go to discoverredox.com, again, discoverredox.com, and go to the global tab and watch the video called The Genesis of ASEA. Is, guys, the fact that we have this, Dick, I think you alluded to this. The fact that we have this, I believe it's a divine miracle. Because everyone else has been attempting to stabilize this, but they can't. All these NIH studies, all these labs that are out there in the world, and we didn't even touch on that. These other labs are reaching out to us because they now are beginning to believe that we have what we say we have. But a category creator, that's a huge deal. And the fact that we're first to the market and the only one to the market, in your reasoning, Dick, why is that? Why isn't there anybody else coming out with these other redox products and trying to compete with what we have? There's going to be some lookalikes that come out, but they don't have what we have. But why is this so unique and no one else has it?
Well, a lot of it is because we were first to market with this. But a lot of it also has to do with it is much more difficult than you might anticipate to take salt water and produce a stabilized solution of redox signaling molecules that doesn't deteriorate over time in the bottle, and we can ship it to your front door, and it's guaranteed, stable and efficacious for well over a year, because most redox signaling molecules decay and decompensate very quickly because they're very reactive molecules, and they will react with almost anything, including other redox signaling molecules. So the magic with the ASEA is the stabilization process, which is a proprietary. Lee and I both know quite a bit about that, but we've also signed non-disclosure statements. But the real magic is in that the manufacturing, the electrolytic process, and that's been tweaked over the years and improved. But then once you've got these molecules, how do you stabilize them so they don't spoil, so that they don't deteriorate? And that is a really important part of this. And not only does the ASEA have a number of patents on that process, but they also have now 14 years and multiple trade secrets. In other words, each time they tweak this and figure out a better way, change the electrical current, change the electrodes, change this, change that. There's all kinds of parameters that they have tweaked over the years, and those are all trade secrets. So even if somebody kind of figured out kind of how we stabilize them, they would be way behind where we're at. I think ASEA in the future could very well produce designer redox signaling products with a variety of different ingredients that might affect physiology differently. I think that may be the future of this company, but we're not there yet. And we don't need to be there yet because we've barely scratched the surface with the product that we have. And the product that we have is incredible. So,
Lee, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I was in the chat room. Sorry, ask your question again.
Category creator, that we haven't had anything come out to this degree that affects everything alive. And it, again, I'm an ex-stockbroker. I mean, if somebody would have told me about this back when I was doing IPOs, initial public offerings, I would have said, you're freaking nuts. There's no way you can have something that works on plants, animals, babies, humans, and it does everything. It does this. It does everything that we say. It sounds crazy, but like my favorite question, yeah, but what if? But the fact that we're first to the market, Lee, and we're global, we're in 33 countries. And if people just understood the absolute risk that Vertus Norton took to get this to us so that I could get off my 500 pain pills and you got your wife back, and Dick, you know, you are who you are today and your wife as well, and all the thousands of people, all because of one guy. I mean, but we haven't had a category created technology, Lee, in penicillin. I don't know. And how long did it take that to become standard?
Oh, a lot of
Yeah,
years.
the thing here is that the reason why it's a category creator is because it's what we call a pleiotropic. And what that means is that Dick was talking about the 1-to-1 ratio, you know, the drug, one problem, 1-to-1. It's a very reductionist science. We're just the opposite of that. It's 1-to-many. It's pleiotropic. And so it is foundational to all cells. It doesn't matter what the cell is, plant, animal, bacteria, you know, whatever it is, everything runs on reduction, oxidation, or the movement of electrons. That's the signaling. That's what signaling is the movement of an electron from one molecule to the next molecule. And it happens instantaneously and rapidly. And I can promise you that big pharma right now is working in many ways to discover what we already know, and that is how to flip these switches, how to turn switches on and how to turn them off. This is what will eventually lead to bona fide gene therapy, is when you can go in and go into the deepest recesses of a cell and turn a switch on, a genetic switch on, or to silence gene expression in a very specified way. Then you've got a drug. And I think one of the things that's going to be like the rising tide, you know, that floats all boats, will be that when everybody's talking about redox, like they do Kleenex, you know, it's going to be a household term. I was talking with Dr. Marine just the other day, and she went to an integrative medicine meeting in New Orleans, and she sat in on a couple of the lectures, and they were talking about redox. And I said, well, what did they say about it? And she said they went right by it, assuming that everybody in there knew what it was. That it was so inculcated into the topic matter, as it happened to be related to glutathione, that it just was an assumption that you understand redox. Well, this is going to come out and get to the level of Kleenex, where everybody identifies, sneezing tissues with a specific term, and we're going to have owned that corner of the market, at least in the broad sense, the non-pharmaceutical sense. But that's what makes this exciting, and that's why this is going to extend to anti-aging. This is why this is going to be, anti-inflammaging, that's the new term coming down the pike. The next 2 decades is going to be all about anti-aging. And it's not just the skin, cosmetic stuff. This is deeply penetrated into cellular pathways.
Real quick,
inflammaging is very interesting. I was just texting back and forth with Maureen because it seemed like that was a new word for her, a new thing, and yet I've been reading about that and teaching about that. Inflammation equals oxidative stress. What ASEA does is to help the body ameliorate and tone down oxidative stress, and inflammation is what causes aging. It's a lifetime of inflammation at the cellular level, out of control oxidative stress. We've got the only product on the market that's really good at helping the body to control that. So,
wow,
exciting stuff.
And what's crazy in wrapping up, and we had Dr. David Silverman on a couple of weeks ago, that anybody that is maybe doubting what we have, just go get a couple tubes of Renew 28, right, Dick? Right, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely.
And go find 10 people and apply it 3 times in 5 minutes. Ann mentioned that earlier. 3 times in 5 minutes, a small amount, apply to your boo-boo and see what happens to your boo-boo. You'll validate this. Do it to 10 people. Whether you believe it or not, just go do it. Because I keep asking, what if? What if this is real? This changes everything in health, wellness, medical, beauty, athletics, the whole gambit. And there's nothing bigger than this to ever come to the market. So,
And if not inflammation, range of motion, flexibility.
yeah, everything.
I mean, you can test it on anybody depending what you again want to marker.
Guys,
And
we
we've
could go
already-
on.
We've already proven that it's real. And I don't mean inflammation, red, swollen, tender, warm
Right.
joint. I mean inflammation where at the root where it starts, and that's oxidative stress. If you can control oxidative stress, you don't get what we think of as inflammation.
Exactly.
This is crazy. I love doing this. I learn something every time we do this. Lee, can you introduce our next week's guest?
Who will learn from again?
Yes, we appreciate having everybody with us tonight. Dr. Dick, thank you for being with us.
Yes.
Next week,
Love it.
we have Dr. Ray Dixon from Phuket, Thailand. He hails out of Australia, originally from the UK, but he currently is coming out of retirement in his later years in Phuket, is one of the leaders through Asia and even in North America. And so we'll be excited to hear from him. He brings a unique perspective, alternative health, chiropractic, naturopathic. He's a wealth of information and understands this as well as anybody. So please join us next week, same time, same channel, 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, right?
Yes, and we'll have Maureen back with us. And please
Yeah.
come back to the one that invited you to come. Give it a shot. What's it going to hurt? Again, what if it works? We know that it will. So please get back. Again, caution, don't go to Amazon to purchase the product. Get back to the one that got you on the call. And two, know where to go for proper research. You can go to redoxmatters.com. This video will be up there shortly, and or go to discoverredox.com, and everything is there to validate what we have. Again, discoverredox.com, and then again, redoxmatters.com is Dr. Osler's amazing. He's been such a blessing to the world with his books that he has written, and you can get those books there. So, guys, thank you so much. We love and adore you all. God
Thanks,
bless, and we'll
everybody.
see you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
We appreciate you for
You bet.
coming. Bye,
Great
y'all.
week.
Have fun in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Again,
Bye-bye.
Maureen, if you're listening, take care. We love you. We
Yep.
miss you. Bye.
See you soon.